I stay here in the campus. You have wonderful opportunity to worship our God every now and then here in the campus. Out in the town, sometimes there are like too many things happening around us that sometimes, this kind of wonderful, warm feeling where you feel God's presence very close to you. That kind of sense is not there sometimes. Just staying here, worshiping, praying to God in the classroom, chapel, and then again in the evening. How wonderful it is. So be thankful to God for this sort of environment and the opportunity that you live in. So this evening Bible study, I thought of doing something, not necessarily creative, but something different. And so I have two partners with me. They're all the way from South Africa and Nigeria. So we have Sonipu and Kaino. So thank you for agreeing to be part of this. As you can see, the title of our Bible study is God, Joseph, and Us. And we'll be primarily focusing on chapter 37 and then 39 and 40. And you might be thinking, why not chapter 38? Chapter 38 is the story of Judah and Tamar. We skip that. Yeah, we decided to do on this because if it's a little peculiar. The story of Joseph is very peculiar in the scripture. From chapter 37 and excluding 38 till chapter 50 is a story about Joseph. That's a huge chunk, talking about Joseph. You don't find Abraham's story that long, or even for that case, even Moses, and so it's one of the lengthiest kind of biographical portion in the scripture. The second feature, perhaps, in this story is that we don't have any theophanic activities going on in the story of Joseph. And when I say theophanic activities, I mean to say like angel appearing to Mary, or during the time of Paul's ministry, how earthquake came and then shattered the jail, or during the time of Moses, how the burning bush came out and God encountered Moses. We don't have that kind of God appearing to Moses, to Joseph, and so it's just like our life. Like we live today in this world, and we are disciples of Jesus Christ, and we try to build relationship with Him, with Jesus, and we try to give our best and live according to His will. But we normally do not have an angel coming in front of us and telling us that something is going to happen. Or we don't see the tree burning in front of us and God appearing and talking to us. So that's why we want to just have a kind of conversation this is like a conversational Bible study, if you would like to say. Um, and so I've asked Sonipu and Kaino to go through this chapter and come up with some questions that they want to ask. And so they will be asking those questions. But before they ask the question, I would give to Sonipu time to give a brief summary of the story.
Thank you, sir. In a nutshell, I'll quickly summarize the story of Joseph found in chapter 37, 39, and 40. So, 37. Chapter 37 presents a picture of Joseph as a young boy who was favored by his father Jacob. His father Jacob made him an ornate robe, or also known as the coat of many colors. His brothers hated him, they envied him, and they were jealous of him. Maybe probably for really good reasons, or could be vice versa. Depends on whose perspective you read the text. From the brother's perspective, from his father's perspective, from Joseph's perspective, or from the perspective of an investigator looking at all sides. Nevertheless, in this story, we'll find that Joseph received two dreams. And in both his dreams, his parents and his brothers bowed to him, not literally but symbolically. Typically, when we read the story of Joseph, we have this presupposition in our mind that Joseph, being a very, perfect person, with no bad attitudes, with no bad reports, just flawless, the perfect Old Testament Adam. But as you read the story and continue reading, you'll see that he was the kind of person who would tell bad stories about his brothers. The text never mentions Joseph telling good stories about his brothers. So, in one sense, perhaps Joseph was a self-righteous man. And as the story unfolds, we see that he was sold by his brothers and he was taken to Egypt. Chapter 39. In chapter 39, it presents a threefold series of events that took place in Joseph's life: the house, the seduction, and the prison. First event, the house. In the house of Potiphar, God was with Joseph. Joseph was from a mere servant to the head of servants. He prospered in whatever he did. He worked hard. He was loved by people and he was well respected. The second event, the seduction. Potiphar's wife tempted Joseph multiple times. She seduced him. And in every occasion, Joseph, he refused. Eventually, he was falsely accused with false evidence. Even the husband believed the lie. And eventually, he was thrown into the prison. Now, the third event, the prison. Even in prison, God still showed kindness to Joseph and he granted Joseph favor. The warden of the prison made Joseph the head of the prison, and under Joseph, he overtook all the activities that were happening in the prison. Now, chapter 40. If we read chapter 40, we see that for the first time, the text mentions Joseph using his gift in interpreting dreams. Prior to that, in chapter 37, the text never mentions Joseph using gifts. It simply says Joseph had a dream. It did not say Joseph interpreted a dream. So in this story, you will see that Joseph met two officials, the baker and the cupbearer. Both had a dream. Both of them shared the dream to Joseph. Joseph explained the meaning of the dream, and after 3 days, the baker was impaled by King Pharaoh, whereas the cupbearer, he regained his position in the royal court. So this is a short, concise summary of chapter 37, 39, and 40. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonibu, for the clear summary. To begin our discussion, sir, can you tell us more about Joseph's family background?
Well, thank you, first of all, Sonibu, for the summary, and also, thank you for the question. Like, if you look at Genesis chapter 37, we see that Joseph was 17 years old. So in today's context, maybe he was in high school, class 11 or so, right? And it says that he was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Now, who are these two ladies? Bilhah and Zilpah, these two ladies were the maidservants of Rachel and Leah, respectively. Now we know that Jacob was married to this Rachel and Leah, right? First to Leah, and then he had to work for 7 years, and then he got married to Rachel. And even though Rachel was the beloved, and Jacob loved Rachel so much, but he had to marry Leah. Rachel was barren, and Leah was giving birth, to Jacob. And so Rachel was jealous that her sister Leah was, bearing children for Jacob. And so Rachel said, "Why don't you take my maidservant Bilhah, and the children that is born from her will be our children." And so that's how Bilhah gave birth to multiple children. Then after some time, Rachel began to give birth namely to Joseph and Benjamin. But Leah stopped giving birth because she has grown old, and now she was feeling jealous that Rachel was giving birth. And so again, Leah asked Jacob to take her maidservant, Zilpah. And that's how we have these two ladies, Bilhah and Zilpah. Of course, during the time, I don't think it was anything, wrong to have multiple wives. I think it was quite normal to have 2-3 wives. But in this family, we see a deep-rooted kind of hatred and jealousy. And it's in this kind of environment that Joseph was growing up. And not only that, there was also a very deep root of favoritism. You have Esau and Jacob, and you remember the story how their mother Rebecca showed favor to Jacob, and that's how Jacob got the blessing. So, and in this story, you find Jacob is now favoring Joseph. You see, and we also see that the father made a very, very special, colorful cloth and then give to Joseph. And it says that it's a long sleeve. And some commentators comment that long sleeves usually are worn by people who do not work. So Joseph was more or less helper, but not really manual worker kind of person. A favorite son of the father. And this really angered his other 11 or say 10 brothers. Benjamin might be a little small perhaps. And it is from this kind of family, dysfunctional family that Joseph grew up. And so what I want to, say is this. Like, sometimes when we think about, we idealize our, future family, or sometimes we invade some family. Normally we invade or we idealize in terms of a family that is very rich, comfortable, and also God-fearing people, and they live very well. We kind of, invade that kind of family. But let me tell you, no matter how rich a family might be, how comfortable a family might be, or how godly the family. It's good to be godly, it's very good. But every family goes through certain problem that we might not be able to see from outside. But inside, there are problems happening. So, what I want to say from this Joseph story is, um, let us not define who we are from where we come from. Let us not define ourselves from the past or from the circumstances we are. But we should be thinking about how do we respond to the life we have. How do we develop our life moving ahead, going forward? I think that's the most important thing. Even if you come from a rich background, very good background, or even if you come from a very dysfunctional, distorted kind of background, the important thing is, how do we develop our life moving forward? If you want to find meaning in life, we need to do that, regardless of our background. Thank you. Yeah?
Thank you so much, sir. That was very interesting. And looking at the family structure, we know that in a family there's a mixture of different individuals, and each individual has their own personality type. So my question is, what was Joseph like? What was he like, his personality?
Yeah, in your summary, you have mentioned a little bit like self-righteous, and reading this, I also noticed that this person Joseph might have been a spoiled brat, a spoiled child. Too much, The passage says in 37, chapter 37, that he would go to Jacob, his father, and complain about his brothers. Right? So he must have been a very irritating character to his brothers. No? I think if we have a sibling who is always complaining about us, we also feel irritated, I think. And then, look, he's 17 years old, right? Now, he had like a couple of dreams happening during this time. And one of the first dream is about the harvest time, and they were cutting maybe they were harvesting the wheat, and they were bundling up the sheaves and keeping it. And then in the dream, he saw that his brother's sheep, the one that is harvested and then bundled up, that sheep bowing down to his sheep. And so he told that to his brothers. Okay, that irritating guy said to his brother, look, your sheep all bowed down to my sheep. And his brothers were more irritated, saying, are you saying that you are going to rule over us? So that was the first dream. And then he dreamt again. The second one, this time, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. And he said that even to his father, not just to his 11 brothers. 11 years, right? 17 years, right? I think by now he knows what is right and wrong. I think, to a certain extent, his sensitivity skill is developed, I guess. But he is so spoiled that he doesn't care whether he is irritating his brothers or not. Even after knowing when he told the first dream, that his brothers were so irritated, and yet he went on to tell the second dream. And so I think he was a very spoiled child in the family. As Sonipo said, perhaps a self-righteous person. Um, uh, and no wonder his brothers, when they saw Joseph coming with food for them, they were like mocking at them. Oh, the dreamer is coming. Let's kill him. You know, to that extent, they hated him.
As we reflect on Joseph's personality, his openness, confidence, and perhaps youthful immaturity, we begin to see the kind of a person he was at a young age. So this brings to our next question. It might sound similar, but what does Joseph's dream reveal about his calling? And as a young man, how did he handle it?
Yeah, I think through his dream, I think God was trying to say something, you know, repeatedly telling how he will be the Lord over his brothers and Lord over his family. And you know, if you go ahead and read the whole story, then you do find that that happens. You know, when there's the famine in the whole part of that land, the brothers they came and you know they have to bow down to him to get the food. It did happen. The only thing is, I think he was a little bit insensitive to the way he communicated the dream. Perhaps he could have done better, or perhaps he could have consulted his father first. I dreamt like this. What does it actually mean? You know, instead of bashfully going up and you know declaring, you know, that giving a signal that one day you guys are going to, you know, worship me. Instead of doing that, he could have taken maybe a more sensitive route. The other thing that maybe we can learn is God can talk to us through dreams. Okay, I'm not saying that you know tonight when you sleep you will get dreams and then you start acting as if that's only dream and the one and only dream that is going to happen. No, I'm not trying to say that. But God does talk in dreams, and you know we need to be sensitive enough to understand if God is talking to us through dreams, then we should be sensitive enough to understand and to listen to that dream. But the thing is this, again, when, you know, sometimes you get that kind of negative sort of dream, right? Like somebody dying, or, you know, among the owls we have, like, if one of the teeth falls off, then someone is going to die in the family or something like that. Or if there's a big feast, you know, you are giving a big feast, or you are in a feast, then some sort of funeral or something is going to really happen. You know, all those things, and that scares you. But I think when we see that kind of dream, we can really commit to God that dream and ask God to help. And if those, you know, dreams are going to happen, take it away. Don't let that happen, and commit that to God. Submit that to God. And I think God can answer our prayers. So it's not like once you get something in your dream, that is bound to happen, no matter what it is. No. God is far more greater than our dreams.
Thank you for that, sir. Now, we'd like to move into the text. So in the text, chapter 37, we find an interesting puzzle. So in verse 25, it says, the brothers saw the caravans of Ishmaelite coming from Gilead, traveling to Egypt. But in verse 27, it says that the brothers sold Joseph to the merchants of Midianites. So is this a contradiction within the text? Or between verse 25 and 27, did some manuscript went missing? What do you think about this?
Yeah, we all know, we have studied source criticism and so on, and especially Pentateuch. When we study Pentateuch, we know that the first 5 books that we have, which is also called as Torah, it's a compilation of many, chiefly 4 sources, but perhaps there were more sources than just the 4. And then, it was combined over a very long period of time, maybe over like 500, 600 years. And so, perhaps this Midianite, Ishmaelites problem shows that maybe when the redactor, the final redactor of the story, whoever was redactor means the editor, and ancient editors are more like authors also, not like modern editors. They were more like, ancient editors were more like authors as well. So maybe the ancient redactor was looking at a couple of sources, or different sources, and maybe he was just combining them together. And so maybe perhaps because of that, you find like in one source there's Ishmaelite, and he writes down that, and then later another source which is looking at, maybe that refers to the merchants as the Midianites, and so maybe the Midianites were inserted there. So maybe it's a sort of different sources being put together to make the story. So that's from the source criticism perspective, and we can also talk from a narrative perspective, that it's just one story, that the Ishmaelites are the bigger, like the bigger title, and the Midianites are the subset of that bigger title. For instance, like we can say, the Indians are very good in business, and then the subset of that, from that Indian, we can say the Marwalis are very good. So, from a narrative perspective, we can argue from that, point of view as well. So there are different ways to look at that.
The passage may be complex about the merchants, but it is clear about the brother section, and this brings us to our next question. When Joseph was sold to the merchants, his brothers conspired among themselves to fabricate a lie about Joseph's death. So, sir, can the lie here about Joseph's death be considered as God's plan, or was it human wrongdoing?
Selling him. Definitely it was the evil motive of his brothers that led to that led to Joseph being sold to the Midianites. I think it's not divine act, but I think it's the human jealousy, the hatred coming out, and perhaps Satan using those energy to act in that manner. Is that the question?
Thank you, sir, for that. Now, let's move to chapter 39. So, straight away in chapter 21, 39, the first few verses, particularly verse 2, it uses the phrase God was with Joseph. But prior to that, in chapter 37, the text never mentions or uses that phrase that God was with Joseph. So what does it tell us about Joseph before he was sold and after he was sold? So what was happening in between the gap?
Yeah. Thank you for noticing that. You know, in chapter 39, verse 2, you see this in the story that the Lord was with Joseph. And you know, I had to pause there when I was reading also. I had to pause and I have to think again. And because I noticed in the early part that this Joseph is a spoiled child, spoiled brat, and so on, irritating guy, insensitive person. And then, as I went on reading this verse 2 of chapter 39, you know, it just caught my attention that the Lord was with Joseph. Now, you know, we all know that God is there knocking at our heart. He wants to come in. That's what the book of Revelation says. He wants to come in. But it depends on us. Unless and until we open the door of our heart and let God come and dine with us, He cannot come. Right? And so the fact that God was with Joseph, I feel like Joseph might have had a conversion experience. Joseph might have had, you know, during the process of all the, you know, being put in the pit and then later selling to this Midianites and then sold like slaves, being auctioned, right? Letting him stand and then people coming and, you know, bidding in the auction and then the highest bidder buying him. In all that experience, I think he really might have went to God, asked him to deliver him, to come to him. And the interesting thing is, in verse 3 of that chapter 39, you see it is written that Potiphar saw that God was with Joseph. Now, I want to mention one thing here. It is one thing for us to claim at the top of our lungs that I am converted, I have accepted Jesus Christ, right? After every youth camp, I used to do like that. I've accepted Jesus Christ again for the 4th time. But it is completely another thing for others to see God in your life. You see, there's a big difference in that. You know, so when we accept, say, for us, Jesus Christ, when we accept Jesus Christ, when we have God, when we invite, when we respond to the knocking of the God and let Him enter into our life, I think a person becomes more accountable and more responsible. Accountable in what? What does it mean, accountable? It means understanding that, you know, I am being called by God. You are being called by God. And we have responded to that. And we need, we need to be responsible to that calling. You know, not only that, even when we live here on this earth, that we need to be accountable to our parents, to our sponsors who are, sponsoring us with lots of money over the years for us to study here. And so we need to be responsible. And Joseph's life is God, the story says God was with Joseph, and Joseph was very diligent and hardworking. And that's why Potiphar made him the chief servant in his household. So when you are converted, it is one thing to say, I accepted Jesus Christ, but it is completely another thing to hear from others or to let people see God working in you.
But sir, we see that Joseph was blessed by God because he tried to live according to God's will, though he was not perfect. So when we look at chapter 39, Potiphar's wife tempted him, and he saw it as sin against God rather than just against his master. So what do you think about Joseph's response?
Yeah. I mean, these two are asking some great questions, you know. I didn't even tell them, right? Did I? No, I didn't. How would I, right? Yeah, it's very interesting. You see, when you know, Potiphar was a high official ranking person in Egyptian empire. You see, and I don't think, I don't think Potiphar will marry a very, very, I mean, there is nothing like ugly. I mean, everyone is beautiful, in one way or the other. Yeah, but, I don't think Potiphar will just marry someone like that. Must be a very, very, good figure, very good smile, long hair. And Egyptians are known for their beauty. Okay? I hope I'm right, ladies? I'm not mastering that, but I'm just trying to, figure it out here. And so, it must be a very, very, big temptation, right? This beautiful, wonderful lady is tempting him. She is telling, come, sleep with me. And not just once a month, but every day. I think it will be very difficult for many of you guys, unmarried guys here. Who knows? Like Joseph might have thought, maybe I will elope with her. I will take her and run away. Because now he is also the chief servant, so he must be enjoying and earning at least some money and something like that. He can afford to do that too, perhaps. But the interesting thing for Joseph is he was thinking about whether this is good for God or not. He was not, he might have thought about it, whether Potiphar will be happy about that or not. That naturally comes for every one of us. But for him, the most important thing was whether it will be pleasing to God or not. He is thinking in terms of, this is such a wicked thing. It's a sin against God. In other words, Joseph had God at the center of his life. And everything that he did, he asked God, or he thought whether this is right with God or not first. Before making any decision, before doing anything, he will ask God first whether this is right or wrong. Is it pleasing in your sight? And then only, if it is right, if it is okay, then he will go ahead. If it is not, then he will not. Even if it's the most beautiful thing in front of him, he will not. Because it's a wicked thing in the sight of God. And I think we all need to learn something from this. We all, in different ways, that beautiful Potiphar's wife might come out in different fashion for us as well. it is very, very important that we have God in the center and talking with Him every decision that we make, every step that we take. Thank you, kind of
Thank you,
asking.
sir. Thank you, sir, for that. I'd like to ask a question when he was in prison. So when Joseph was in prison, despite him experiencing false accusation, the prison warden made him the head of the prison again. So from the house to the prison, that was his journey. So what was God teaching Joseph in those moments? What lessons can we draw from this?
Yeah, I don't know what God was trying to teach Joseph, but I think we can learn something from this story, for us. And that's why the title, God, Joseph, and Us. Joseph was the most favorite, enjoying to the fullest, and then he became a slave. And then from there, he was made the chief servant. And then he was falsely accused of attempting rape. And then he found himself in jail. If you look at the story, when he was 30 years old, he will become like the chief minister or the prime minister of Egypt, made by Pharaoh, right? So, and his life started, the story starts when he is like 17 years. So if you calculate that, commentator says that he might stay in Potiphar's house for 2 or 3 years. And then he might have been in the jail for 10 to 11 years. That's not fun, okay? To live in a jail for 10, 11 years. In that kind of ups and downs of life, one time a little up, very up, and then coming down, and then again climbing up a little bit, and then going down. As human beings, we will certainly feel dejected, right? We will certainly feel bad, disappointed, angry, frustrated. You see, and I'm sure Joseph also felt in that way, because he is also just human being like you and I. He's not like half angel and half human being. No, he is like you and I. Same blood, flesh and bone and skin and all those things are there. So he must have been dejected, frustrated, disappointed. But what we see in Joseph is that his disappointment did not become a reason to act irresponsibly. His dejection or his depression did not become a reason to disobey God or to disobey your parents, our parents. Sometimes we often do that. When we are disappointed, we want something we don't get. We are disappointed, and we begin to use that disappointment as a reason to disobey our parents. Right? We find ourselves doing that. Yeah. But for Joseph, in that kind of disappointment, he went closer and deeper towards God. You see. The other thing that I want us to learn perhaps is this. A God is an omnipotent God. He can do anything. When Joseph was in the prison, God could have said, well, he is wrongly accused. He cannot be put in the prison. And then God could have done something, earthquake or something like that, and then took Joseph and sent him somewhere else. God could God can do that. But God seems to have decided not to do that. God seems to have decided not to transform what was happening in Joseph's life. But God was willing, and God did transform Joseph's attitude. Yeah. And when Joseph's attitude was transformed, he began to be diligent again. He began to be hardworking again. And then the jailer, the overseer in the jail, saw, just like Potiphar saw God in Joseph, the jailer also saw God in Joseph. You see? You know, sometimes we get tired. Some of you might be saying, OTS, I thought it was so good. I thought I will enjoy, I will have lots of friends, but then the second year comes and, I hate already this place. I wish I go somewhere else, far away in the forest or far away in a big city where nobody can recognize me. You know, I sometimes feel like that, not necessarily of OTS, but sometimes also of OTS. No, because we all are human beings, right? We get that kind of feeling, I'm tired of this place, because of some situation, circumstances, or because of some friends. But, you know, sometimes the problem is not the place. The problem is us. Now, we might want to run away, and if you go somewhere else, far away from OTS and go somewhere else, if you are not changed, you will still feel, after reaching the place after 5-6 months, you will be, I wish I was in OTS. You know, you would love to come back again. And then you come back and you want to go there. It will be endless game like that. But, you know, sometimes God does not want to change a circumstance or the circumstance, but He wants to transform our attitude. And when our attitude is transformed, you know what happens? Our surrounding begin to transform. The people begin to transform. And something new will come out because of the transformation in your attitude. And I think God did not transform what was happening in Joseph's life, but He transforms Joseph's attitude. And that's why he was a blessing. Whatever he did prospered. What we learn from this story of Joseph is that this world is created by God, as it is said in the scripture, and that He is in control of this world, and that our life is in His hands. You know, towards the end of the story, if you remember, his brothers came to take the grain during the famine, and slowly Joseph disclosed himself to his brothers that I am your brother Joseph. And it's so interesting. Ningri Joel was talking about that today in her sermon. And when he disclosed, you know, his brothers were so scared, but Joseph's reply was that what you did was evil. Yes, I understand what you did was evil. But God is more powerful. He used that evil and transformed it into something good. So that in a time like this in famine, I could help you. I could save our family. kind of response by Joseph is not a mere response, okay? There is a deep theological conversion there. Not anyone can say that. Only a person who has experienced God in a very organic and deep manner can say that. That God has transformed your evil intention and has made something useful, meaningful, something that will redeem you and I. That's a deep, deep theological conversion that he had. Let's remember from this story that our background, our past should not define who we are, but let us concentrate on how we can develop our life. How should we respond to the life we have right in us? We should concentrate on that. And let's trust the Lord, let's believe in Him, and let others, just like in Joseph's life, let others see God working in you. And if that happens, you will just climb like Joseph did. And even if people try evil things, evil schemes, even if Satan is at work, you will conquer all that. And you will rise up to become God's agent for His people and for His kingdom. So, God bless us all, and I hope it was something meaningful for you as well. Thank you. Thank you, Sanipo, and kind